Hello students. In this center, you will be analyzing figurative language. Good readers look at the author's words, question the author's words, and make personal connections. Good readers interpret the rationale or the reason why an author would select those specific words, and then apply those same techniques to one's own writing to make it much more visual and much more alive. Today in this center, you will be reading like a writer. I want you to pay close attention to my think aloud. I will be looking at different points from the novel Bigger. I will read the author's words. I will question and try to classify those words based on the figurative language words on our word wall and the figurative language words I have in my mental schema. At that point, I will try to decide, based on the questions in my brain, why the author selected to use this method and what the author is really trying to say to the reader. Let's begin. The first set, obviously you can see I've done for you. Shelby sent several soldiers surveying. Of course, you can already see from the video, I have labeled that alliteration. I was able to classify Shelby sent several soldiers surveying in the category of alliteration because every letter in the sentence begins with the letter S. So I'll go back to what I know about figurative language, all the terms and definitions, or I can refer to the figurative language word wall in the classroom, and I can see that the author's words, Shelby sent several soldiers surveying, most closely identifies with the term and definition of alliteration, using the same letter, consonant letter, or sound in every word or almost every word in this sentence. So I have to ask myself, this is quite creative and quite fun, but why would an author use alliteration? Sometimes authors use alliteration to make a point in a description of a character. Sometimes an author does it in the sense of making a strong statement to make the sentence pop from the page because the author of the narrative text is trying to tell the reader this is important information. I have written this in such a manner that I am trying to send a message to you. So when I see the word Shelby sent several soldiers surveying, this must be an important portion of the text. So when I interpret it, obviously it's pretty plain to see what the meaning of this figurative language is. And my interpretation is General Shelby sent soldiers on an expedition to scout any problems. And we know from our westward expansion unit that to scout means to go before the group to see if there are any problems ahead of the group. In military terms, one would call this reconnaissance work. Now let's go to the next piece of author's words. Crack. The riding stick hit Isaac across the face. Wow. When I hear the word crack, that definitely sends an image into my brain. When I hear the word crack, the riding stick hit Isaac across the face, I can see the predicament the character Isaac is experiencing at this time. I can feel what is going on at this time, and I know that Isaac, being a former slave, is being beaten by what the author calls the gambling man. When an author creates a visual in a reader's brain, that is oftentimes called imagery. So overall, multiple uses of figurative language gives the reader an image in their brain so they can see, like a movie strip, what is going on. Specifically, the word crack in italics, and normally in a novel situation you will see these words that denote sound italicized. I know from the figurative language word wall and my own schema, going back to that definition, that I can classify the word crack as onomatopoeia. Now, why? What does the author mean at this point? And why would the author use that particular word? Besides, it's just fun language. Crack. When I know the situation in the novel, I realize this is Isaac, a slave, being beaten by his owner. I know that this author wants us there. This author realizes that this is a part of American history that all Americans in some manner or fashion should be able to see. And when I read that, I know that this is a violent act committed against an innocent African American slave. And at this point in history, we would identify the slaves as African American because at this point, all the slaves in existence in the South have been born in the United States. So I know this is a violent act committed against an innocent African American slave. Granted, if the writer had said the gambling man committed a violent act against the American slave, African American slave, that of course gives us information. However, when we see crack, the riding stick hit Isaac across the face. Even if we said crack, the riding stick struck Isaac across the face, we as readers see the action verb and we see the onomatopoeia work together in concert to make this visual come alive. And we're able to see it better than just know the information. Going to the next piece of figurative language. The next piece of figurative language says, the blue eye advises. If that's how it turns out to be, you'll make it somehow. As the reader of this text, I can identify back to the point where Tyler is questioning himself over the situation with his father. Will his father return? Will his father stay with Shelby and the troops? So I know that at this point, Tyler is being consoled by his dog. Anyone that's ever owned a dog knows that dogs with their owners do try to console them. They can recognize when something's going on. But can their eyes literally talk to them? Not really. However, the comfort that comes from the animal being there might allow us as human beings to come to a conclusion of our own, but of course relying on that support from our animal friend. That's my interpretation. When I look at those words, we know that an eye cannot advise, but this author has chosen to use personification to help us understand what's going on with Tyler and Bigger. So personification is where we take non-human objects and give them human characteristics. And of course, my interpretation at this point is the fact that Bigger is consoling Tyler in only a way a dog can. However, using the piece of personification allows us as the reader to really get inside what's going on with Tyler's internal conflict. Going on, I just want to summarize real briefly, because we do have 2 more pieces of figurative language I want to just quickly interpret. But just as a quick summary of those 3, when we read as a writer, we look at the author's words. We try to classify those words as pieces of figurative language. Then we try to interpret, why did the author use this method of writing, and what does it mean? Then, to take it to the next level, we as writers try to mimic these writing styles of great writers to help us become more proficient writers. Let's look at the next 2 very quickly. The skull was as smooth as a globe. Of course, that's a simile. As smooth as a globe is the indication that it's a simile. And when you draw that visual in your brain, I can see that smooth skull where the body has decomposed and only the skull is there. Smooth is what I know that I can go back into my mental filing cabinet as a smooth round sphere representing the earth. Lastly, the scar was a lightning bolt from his eye to his mouth. I recognize that as a metaphor. Was is the past tense of is, and we know when one object or one character is compared to another object or another character by saying it is, that's a metaphor. The scar was a lightning bolt from his eye to his mouth. Again, I can see that scar shooting down Isaac's face. I can see it. I can visualize it. And that's the purpose of the figurative language, to help create a visual in the reader's mind. And this overall use of figurative language to draw a visual into a reader's mind is called imagery. Good readers read like writers to apply these skills into their own writing. Thank you, and complete your graphic organizer on your center sheet.